بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. ما بعد، فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. My dear respected, my most honorable elders, beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, we begin by taking this opportunity to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to glorify and praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for once again enabling us with the unique and wonderful opportunity to come together for the sole purposes of worshipping Him, glorifying Him, praising Him, and ultimately to send our praises and our salutations upon our Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we pray that Allah Azza wa Jalla will continue to facilitate these kinds of opportunities for us in the future, inshaAllah. Last week we spoke about the necessity of fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The reason why it's so important that we should fear Him. Why taqwa is incomplete, God consciousness is incomplete without having that fear of the divine, without feeling that someone is there constantly watching over you, someone is there who is going to hold you to account for your actions upon this world. This week I want to talk about something a little bit different. I want to talk about lessons in productivity and to never give up, to constantly strive, which is the most apt meaning of what jihad is supposed to be, right? Constantly striving to achieve the best that you can possibly achieve and to become the best versions of ourselves that we can be. Now, before we talk about that, it's important for us to ask a question of ourselves. And that question is, how do we measure a person's productivity or success or lack thereof in this world? When we think about someone who, let's take a few examples. An example would be there's Zayd, and Zayd has lost weight, right? He's been dieting, he's lost weight because he successfully controlled his diet and he exercised. There's perhaps somebody who has achieved high grades in their exams, and the reason why they've achieved those high grades in those exams is because they've studied hard, and while their friends and everybody else was watching TV and playing on their phones and getting up to no good, this person was studying, putting the effort in, doing the hard graft. And we can make the claims that these two individuals who've achieved this success were more productive than their counterparts because their results speak for themselves. So when we say Zayd, who lost all of the weight because he controlled his diet and he exercised, he lost the weight. That was the result of his actions. That was the fruit of the efforts that he put in. Or somebody who has excelled in their exams, that was the result of all of the effort that they put in when others were playing, when others were messing around. They were studying, they were working hard. Now, that's how we measure success. Right? Do we not measure success? Do we not think, oh, well, Zayd's done a fantastic job. MashaAllah, I saw him, a few months ago, and he was, and now, MashaAllah, he's lost so much weight and he's doing well. Or this person who's done excellent in their exams because they put the hard work in. And we measure their success based upon their results. We measure their productivity based on their results. But what if, I'll ask you the question, what if Zayd working, what if Zayd was there struggling day and night, working on his diet, working on his exercise, but unfortunately, because of his metabolism, for one reason or another, he was unable to lose the weight. But he put just as much effort in. He put all of the energy and all of the effort in, but he didn't get the results that were expected. What if that person worked day and night, studied hard, put all the hard graft in, but still managed to fail the exams? Would we still say that they have been successful? Would we still regard them as successful? We wouldn't. Why not? Would we call them productive? Probably not. We'll say, no, the results speak for themselves. How can they be productive if their results do not match? Our religion tells us, Islam tells us, that our success or our failure, it comes ultimately from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not as a result of our efforts. We're required to give the absolute best that we can give, to do the absolute best that we can do. And it's only Allah that decides the success that we are due. It's only Allah that provides us with success or the lack thereof. Our productivity is never ever tied to our results. Never look at the results and think, oh well, you know what, I've done well because the results speak for themselves. But our productivity is instead tied to giving our best, doing the best that we can do, exerting all of our energy and our efforts in achieving success, making Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with us, having patience and sabr when it doesn't go our way, and submitting to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that ultimately whatever is going to happen, Allah is in control. You know, it's like, you know, I've given this example before, you know when you, that sense of tawakkul and that reliance that you have, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the being that is in control of everything, the one who says kun fayakun, he says be and it is, it comes. We're entrusting our lives and what's going to happen in our future, the complete dictation of our lives to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the best individual to give our lives up for. It's the best person to put our lives in control of. Nobody can decide and do better for us than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires for us. Now I'll give you an example, right? You know when you're driving a car, and I hope you haven't been in this situation, right? And you're driving a car and you have passengers, and you're driving with it recklessly. You've got this new car and you want to see how it handles itself. Right? And you may be speeding, but you don't realize it because you're driving, right? And you're in control of the destiny. You're in control of how it runs and how it works. At the same time, if you were sitting, now think of yourself sitting in the passenger seat. You're sitting in the passenger seat and somebody else is driving exactly the same way that you were, recklessly, fast. And you're there holding on to your seat, putting your foot down on an imaginary brake in front of you. Right? That's what happens, isn't it? Because you're not in control. So you're feeling it a lot more. When you give up your control to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can rest easy. Your foot won't need to come out onto an imaginary brake. You won't need to hold on to your seat for your day life. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best person in control of your vehicle that is your vehicle of life. So going back to productivity and how we measure productivity and success, sometimes when we put all of the effort in, we leave it all to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the best person to leave it to. This is evident in the story of Sayyidina Nuh عليه السلام. And this is what I'm going to discuss for the remainder of time that we have. Sayyidina Nuh was a prophet of Allah. Sayyidina Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu ta'ala, and he states that Nuh alayhi salam and his nation, his qawm, the very few people that accepted Islam, accepted his religion, with him, believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and him with him, they will come on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them that, did you convey the message? And they will say, of course, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Allah, we've conveyed the message. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask the nation of Nuh, did Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam convey my message to you? And they will say, Ya Allah, no prophet came to us. No prophet came to us. And then Allah Azza wa Jal will ask Sayyidina Nuh, who will stand as a witness, as a shaheed for you, that you did indeed convey your message or the message to them? And Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam will reply that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his followers will testify on my behalf. They will stand witness for me. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam then stated to Sayyidina Abu Sa'id, so then I and my followers will stand as witnesses for Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam on that day and say he did indeed deliver his message to the people. And this is the interpretation of the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that verse of the Quran that I quoted before you in my khutbah. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. Thus we have made you the just and the best nation, so that you may be witnesses over mankind, and so that the messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam can also be a witness over you. This is the meaning of that statement, that on that day we will be witnesses, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam will be witnesses for Sayyidina Nuh and his nation. Throughout the ages, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent thousands of prophets in order, hundreds of thousands of prophets in order to guide mankind. And if you look at the lives of these prophets, alhamdulillah, they were the most courageous of people. They were the bravest of people. And they were the people who went through the most. They experienced the most hardship in their lives. And there's uncountable. You can't even begin to imagine the amount of precious life lessons that we can gain from that. If we look at the story of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, there are many lessons that we can take from his beautiful journey, his life. Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam was from among the earliest of prophets. And he was sent to a group of idol worshippers. The period, according to Genesis 5, which is the New Standard Revised Edition of the Old Testament, the period between the birth of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, Noah, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the birth of Sayyidina Nuh and the death of Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, the father of mankind, is noted as being 146 years. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam in Sahih Bukhari, there's a hadith reported by Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, he states that the period between Adam and Nuh is 10 centuries, so almost 1,000 years. Now, the statements in both the Prophet ﷺ and the Ahlul Kitab, the people of the book, it doesn't differ, because Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam also lived for a long period of time. So the Old Testament mentions that between the passing of Sayyidina Adam and the birth of Sayyidina Nuh was 146 years. And the Prophet ﷺ said, between the sending of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam on this earth, from heaven onto the earth, and the birth of Sayyidina Nuh is 10 centuries. So it makes complete sense. So it's not a long time. Not a long time at all. The Prophet that Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam was sent after Adam. So you can imagine how quickly the people started to deviate. This is the nature of mankind, that we will start to deviate. We need help. We need divine assistance, the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the form of his prophets. And for generations, the people of Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, they started to worship idols. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentions those idols in the Quran. وَنَفْسًا وَيَعُوقَ وَيَغُوثَ وَلَا سُعَاءً وَلَا وَدَّ. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions these in the Quran. The names of these these idols were Wad and Su'ah. They were Yahuth and Ya'uq and Nasr. And Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas mentions that these names that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran for their idols, they were actually the names of people in their qawm. Righteous people, good people, kind people, people who had achieved great success. And when those people passed away, Shaitan, he put the waswasa into the minds of these of the people that the best way to honor them is to erect statues of them. And then slowly after a short period of time, what tended to happen? We started to worship those idols. Now, this is exactly, if you look at the situation today, you can find exactly the same. People who worship the lives of celebrities and follow them in absolutely everything that they do, eventually that becomes an obsession, doesn't it? Eventually it does lead to a form of idol worship. This is exactly what happened to the people of Nuh. These people who they followed, these people who they emulated, who themselves were very good, righteous men of Allah, but they turned them into statues and idols that they began to worship. And then they needed a prophet to come and to guide them back to the straight path. And Allah Azza wa Jal sent Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, a man of intellect, a man of aql, who was constantly trying to tell them that this is not the right way. Come back to the worship of one. He taught them Tawheed, or he tried to teach them Tawheed. And the ahadith report that Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, over 900 years, over 9 centuries, approximately 10 centuries, Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam began to preach to these people. And among them, only a very few, a handful of people accepted. The handful of people were among the poor, the downtrodden, the rich, the wealthy, the affluent, the influential. They did not want to hear the message of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. They did not want to have anything to do with the message. They did not want to leave the worship of their ancestors, their fathers, their grandfathers, for what Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam was telling them. Their words to him were a shock to their system, and they could not accept, their minds could not accept that this is the way forward. They accused Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam in the Quran, like many of the accusers of prophets. They said, you're just a man like us. We have that today as well in regards to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're just a man like us. What differentiates us from you? What makes you so special that Allah would choose you? And Sayyidina Nuh would try to explain to them that Allah Azza wa Jal would not send an angel, because the qawm is not angels. Right? The qawm is human beings, so Allah would only send a human being, the best of them, in order to guide them. Patiently he preached. He persevered. For over 900 years, approximately 1,000 years, Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam consistently, continuously preached. Now imagine, just imagine, look what happens to us when we try to do something for a few days. We're trying to figure something out. You're trying to assemble that IKEA furniture or something, right? And it's taking you a few days and you're thinking, what's going on? I can't get it right. Eventually you just pack it all in, throw it all away and say, look, I can't do this. I can't deal with this anymore. It's too much for me. Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, over 900 years, preached. Only a handful of people accepted the message. Now he patiently, did he ever think to himself, well, Ya Allah, I've done my duty. Now you asked me to preach, I've preached. These people are not listening. 9 centuries. Yet Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam was continually optimistic. He continued to preach to them, both privately and in public, never ever losing hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that one day Allah Azza wa Jal would guide them. Eventually, as Allah Azza wa Jal states in the Quran, so he invoked his Lord, فَدَعَا رَبَّهُ أَنِّي مَغْلُوبٌ فَانْتَصِرْ. Allah Azza wa Jal states in the Quran, indeed I am overpowered, so help me. And at the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, he started to build a ship, an ark in the middle of nowhere where there's no water for miles and miles around. People laughed at him. People said, "No, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? The man has actually gone crazy now." Every prophet was called a madman. Our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was called a madman. They tried to put everything on them that they could possibly do. Sayyidina Nuh was the same. He's a madman. Look, he started to build a ship. There's no water around. What's he going to do? Sayyidina Nuh did it as he was instructed. He built that ship. Afterwards, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, gather one couple of everything, every creation of Allah onto that ship, every animal. And then the qawm of Nuh that had accepted his message, they also joined him. And that's when the punishment struck. The seas, they started to rise, the rains, they came, and those people who had rejected Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, they perished in the floods. And Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, his small band of people with him accepted the message. Now, that's the story of Sayyidina Nuh. Very quickly, I've got about 6 or 7 minutes. Let's just go through, let's ponder over this story and try to find the lessons that we can take from it. The first lesson that I feel that we can learn from the story of Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam is that when showing someone the correct way, when showing someone the right path, the path that we should tread, we should always do it with patience and with wisdom. This is why Allah Azza wa Jalla states, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmah." Invite people to the way of Allah, to the way of your Lord, with wisdom. And that wisdom means that even when you invite them, be wise to them, understand their emotions, their perceptions, their feelings, and work with them in order to inspire them to the path. Wisdom here also means for yourselves that always do everything with patience, so that when you deliver the message, don't lose hope when that message is not being perceived as you want it to be perceived. Don't lose hope. Don't start to despair when the person is not as open to receiving the message as you would like them to be. And the same thing applies to general things in life. It applies to our children. Children can be difficult to handle. Children won't listen to you at first, but bear with them patiently, and the sweet fruit of patience will ultimately come later. The second lesson that we can learn from the story of Sayyidina Nuh is that always when given a task, complete that task. Complete that task. Bring that task to fruition. Work hard in order to complete that task. This is one of the biggest problems that we have. We start something and it doesn't finish. It never ends. You know? I look at some of our Muslim countries. I'll give you an example. I went back to my family are originally from Kashmir. Right? So the last time I went to Kashmir was probably about 5 years ago, and that's the only time I've been in the last 10 to 15 years. And there's a particular area that was supposed to connect two major cities together. This bridge over some water. Now this bridge, subhanAllah, is almost complete, except for perhaps 50 yards in the middle. 2 pillars. So the bridge is almost complete from either side. It's just in the middle, there's about 50 yards, which hasn't been constructed as of yet. Now, without that bridge, in order to get to the city, it takes you about half an hour, 45 minutes. Once the bridge is constructed and it is functional, that journey would only take you 5 to 10 minutes, max. And I remember saying to my relatives, if only this bridge was complete, we wouldn't have to take this long. And he says he laughed and he says, this bridge has been like this. I said, how long has this been? This should be done pretty soon. He said, it's been like this for about a decade now. About 10 years. It's incomplete. You know, and he said, for another 10 years, I don't think we'll be able to complete it. You know, and I thought to myself, subhanAllah, that this is us Muslims, it describes us to a T, doesn't it? We start things off, we have good intentions, but we never bring them to fruition. We rarely bring them to fruition. And we don't complete our tasks. And if we do complete them, we don't complete them on time. That dedication, that perseverance, and that sense of patience is not there from us. Another example from the lesson from the life of Sayyidina Nuh is that when something doesn't happen the way that you want it to happen, that you desired for it to happen, never despair. Don't lose hope in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Continue to be optimistic because you place your trust and your patience in Him. Another lesson is that when you find yourself in difficulty like Sayyidina Nuh عليه السلام did, then call out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَدَعَا رَبَّهُ. He invited his Lord, he prayed to his Lord, right? He invoked his Lord, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assisted him and helped him. When we're in difficult situations, we ask everybody else for help except Allah. We don't understand. We've lost the value of prayer, of dua. Dua is something that we just do now after prayer, during funerals, or whenever there's a need, a request. Why? Why does there need to be a need? Why does there need to be a specific time when we make dua? Why can't we make dua whenever we want? Whenever we decide we want, oh Allah, provide this for you. You're driving down the road and you see a nice car and you say, I want that car. Why don't you make dua at that moment and say, oh Allah, give me the ability one day that I may be able to purchase it? Why do you have to wait until we come to the masjid for prayer, for Jum'ah, and then say, oh Allah, please remember me in my dua. Can you make dua for this? Can you make dua for that? Why? Why do we not make dua as often as we possibly can? And lastly, when people, another lesson that we can learn from the story of Sayyidina Nuh is that when people mock you, and this is for us as Muslims, we should take comfort in this. When people mock you, when people don't understand what you're doing, they don't appreciate what you're doing, just like our religion now. Sometimes it's mocked, isn't it? We feel somewhat as if our religion is being denigrated at every opportunity. Look at these crazy Muslims. Look at what they're doing. When you're mocked, don't lose hope. Don't despair. When the people mocked Sayyidina Nuh عليه السلام and his followers for building the ark, they had placed their trust in Allah. They had placed their reliance in Him. They didn't lose hope. They didn't stop what they were doing as soon as they were mocked. They said, oh, forget this. Look, everyone's laughing at us. Let's go home. Let's pack our bags. What are we doing here with Sayyidina Nuh building the ship? No. I'm not going to continue to take this humiliation. Continue with your work without caring about what others say. Have that sense of self-confidence. This is what our Prophet ﷺ taught us. And lastly, when you lose someone who you love and someone who you hold dear to your heart, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-knower. Know that everything happens for a reason. This is our belief. We teach children from a young age. We were taught from a young age that we believe in Allah. We believe in His angels. We believe in His books. We believe in the last day. And we also believe in Qadr. Qadr. Khayrihi wa sharrihi min Allah ta'ala. And then we believe in the resurrection after death. That what is Qadr? What is divine destiny? That everything that is good or bad, it only happens with the control of Allah. And I told you, when you place your tawakkul in Him, your reliance in Him, it's like when you're driving the car yourself and you're speeding. Right? Like I gave that example. That, you know, when don't ever be in that situation where you're ever speeding. It's never good to speed, right? But if you're driving a car and you're driving a little bit recklessly, you won't realize that you're driving that recklessly. Whereas if you were sitting in the passenger seat and somebody else was driving the car and they were driving recklessly, you'd be holding on to your seat. Yeah? You're your foot will be coming out for imaginary breaks in front of you, right? That's what will be happening because you're not in control. But if you've given up control to the being that is in control of everything, then you can rest assured knowing that Allah Azza wa Jal is in control of the vehicle that is my life. And there is nobody better for me to give up control for, relinquish control for, than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah Azza wa Jal ultimately wants what's best for me. And also, last but not least, remember that sometimes the results will not come. The results as we expect them will not come. Sayyidina Nuh عليه السلام preached for 950 years. Was there any doubt with regards to his productivity, the efforts, the dedication? Absolutely no doubt. Did anybody try harder than him? No. But did the results come? No, they didn't. People didn't accept the message. Eventually those people who didn't accept the message, they were destroyed in the floods. But they didn't accept. Does that take away from his struggle? It doesn't. Do we say, oh well, Nuh alayhi salam failed? He's a failure of a prophet because he wasn't able to convert those people. He wasn't able to inspire those people to the worship of Allah. No. We judge his productivity not based on the results, but based upon his dedication, but based on his hard work and his efforts. So when we put our efforts in, and sometimes the results don't come, or we don't see it, or they don't arrive the way we want them to, they don't occur the way we want them to, don't lose hope in that. Right? As long as you put your efforts in and know that you've entrusted it to Allah, Allah Azza wa Jal will take care of this. Even if the results are not there, or if the results didn't turn out as you wanted them to. Continue to have patience. This is what sabr is. This is what istiqamah is upon that sabr. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and you